Hello and welcome to the Mushroom Murder Trial podcast. My name is Lisa and guess who I have here today? Hello, Louise.
Hello, miss. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And Louise being here means one thing. We're going to narrate one of the transcripts. And what we're going to do today is Ian Wilkinson's testimony to the court. So Louise is Ian, her first time pretending to be a male.
Okay. I think I'm just going to talk normally.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be able to do this.
No, we don't want to do that. So
Right.
thank you so much for coming in today, Louise, to help us out with this.
Always a pleasure, my love.
I did promise it, so I had to come through.
Yes.
So away we go. I'm going to be Miss Warren, who is part of the prosecution. And as I said, you're Ian William Wilkinson.
Yes. Which is handy because that's actually my last name.
Yes. Did you know that? Spins me up. Maybe you're related.
Maybe.
Could be. Okay, well, that's me starting as Miss Warren. Mr. Wilkinson, could you state your full name for the court again, please?
My name is Ian William Wilkinson.
And your occupation?
I'm the pastor of the Korumburra Baptist Church.
It's Korumburra. It's okay, you do the I'm the pastor of the.
Yeah. I'm the pastor of the
Korumburra
Baptist Church.
There you go. We got it eventually, didn't we?
Oh, dear.
How long have you been in that role?
26 years.
Now, you were married to Heather Wilkinson, is that right?
Yes.
When did you first meet Heather? What year?
76.
1976?
1976, yes.
And when did you marry?
1979.
You had 4 children together, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And their names?
David, Luke, Ruth, and Elizabeth.
And you lived together in Korumburra, is that right?
Yes.
And how long did you live in Korumburra together?
I lived in Korumburra 41. I got it right.
You got it!
I lived in Korumburra 41 years. So together it must be about 39.
Now, did Heather work in paid or unpaid employment?
Initially, she was a stay-at-home mum looking after our kids. She worked as a teacher's aide voluntarily, and that changed into a teacher's aide career, tutoring students in a special program, and then that changed into teaching English to migrants. So that's a career path.
Okay. And as at July 2023, she was 66 years old. Is that right?
Sorry?
She was 66 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was she still working at the time?
Yes. She was teaching English to migrants.
All right. Did Heather have any siblings?
Yes, Heather had 2 older sisters, Gail Patterson and Lynn Young.
And Gail was the older, is that correct?
Gail is the oldest, Lynn is the middle sister, Heather is the baby of the family.
Gail was married to Donald Patterson, is that correct?
Yes.
And they had 4 children, is that right?
Yes.
And their names?
Simon, Matthew, Nathan and Anna.
Now, Gail and Don, as he was commonly known, is that right?
Yes.
They also lived in Korumburra, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And not too far from your place, as I understand it.
Yes, that's correct. Probably about 1 kilometre.
Were you close to them?
Yes, we were very close to them.
You'd see them regularly?
Yes, very regularly.
When you say very regularly, would you be able to put frequency on it?
It varies, of course, but I'd say probably 3 times a week.
Okay, now, Simon was the eldest child, is that correct?
Yes.
And he was married to Erin Patterson.
Yes.
And they had 2 children. We can't say their names. Is that right?
That is correct.
Now, is it the case that you came to know Erin through Simon?
Yes, that's the case.
I want to ask you about your relationship with Erin Patterson. How would you describe your relationship with her?
I would say our relationship was friendly, amicable. It didn't have much depth. I think we were more like acquaintances. We didn't see a great deal of each other.
Did Erin attend the Korumburra Baptist Church?
Yes, she did.
Did she attend often or otherwise?
Once again, it's very hard to quantify because things change over time. There would be periods where she didn't come for a while and other times where she was much more frequent. If I had to say something, I think it would maybe be monthly or something like that,
Okay.
on the average.
Okay. Can I just ask you, your voice is dropping a little bit, which is understandable, but if you could try and keep it up so the jury can hear you, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. Now, as I understand it, with the church services, when the COVID pandemic hit, you or the church began streaming services so people could still attend.
Yes, that is correct.
And Simon and Donald were very much in charge of that.
Yes, that is the case.
And did Erin also assist or share responsibility for that?
Erin did share some responsibility there.
And typically, what was her role in the relation to this?
As I think I understand it, she was helping establish the YouTube link to the service.
Okay. On the occasions Erin did attend church, did you have much to do with her?
We would have some casual conversation. She would talk about the family, how you're going, that sort of conversation.
Okay, all right. Now I've asked you about your relationship with Erin. Can I ask you, based on your observations, how would you describe Heather's relationship with Erin?
Very similar. Heather would have seen Erin more than me, talked to her more than me, but we didn't consider that relationship was close.
And again, based on your conversations, how would you describe Erin generally as a person?
She seemed like a normal person to me, you know. As I say, when we met, things were friendly. We never had arguments or disputes, or she just seemed like an ordinary person.
All right.
I don't know how to describe it.
No, that's fine. I think you've done it. Now, in terms of Erin and Simon's relationship, again, based on your observations, firstly, can I ask you, was it your understanding or to your knowledge that they lived in Western Australia for a period of time after they first married?
Yes.
And then at some point, they returned from Western Australia to Victoria?
Yes.
Do you know where they lived when they returned?
Firstly, they lived just out of Korumburra near a small community, Bina, and then they moved into Korumburra.
Okay, from that point, were you aware of any issues or difficulties within the relationship?
They began living separately, yes.
Did you have any conversation with either Erin or Simon about the relationship, about those difficulties?
I didn't have any conversations with Erin, a couple of conversations with Simon.
All right. Now, in the period when Erin and Simon were living together, did you ever go to their house?
Yes. When they first moved in,
Okay.
Heather and I went out to visit, yes.
Did you go inside?
No.
Where did you go?
Well, we were outside the house and in the driveway, I suppose you'd call it, and we spoke there.
All right. Were there any other occasions when they were living together that you went to their house?
Not that I recall.
And from the period when Erin and Simon began and continued to live separately, did you ever go to Erin's house prior to July 2023?
Yes. I recall going to a house at Shellcott's Road where Erin was living.
Was that Shellcott Road, was it?
Shellcott's Road.
Yes. Was it that you and Heather?
Heather and I.
Did you go inside?
No. We spoke to Erin on the doorstep.
Had you and Heather ever gone for a meal or otherwise shared a meal with Erin before July 2023?
No. We were eating together at times, family occasions, Christmas party, that sort of thing.
Where were those types of events typically held?
Typically at Don and Gail's house.
All right. Now I'm going to ask you about the lunch that occurred on July 29. Before I get to that, can I ask you, how did it come about that you attended that lunch?
Erin extended an invitation through Heather at church.
Do you know when that invitation was extended?
It was reasonably close to the time of the lunch, either the week before or 2 weeks before.
Were you present when that invitation was extended?
No, I wasn't present.
When I ask, were you present at the church but not present with Heather at the time?
We were all at the church, and I wasn't present with Heather and Erin when the invitation was made.
Thank you. How did you become aware of the invitation?
Heather came through. I was still in the main body of the church. She came through from the hall and told me that we'd been invited to Erin's home for a meal.
As best you can, what exactly did Heather say to you at that point?
Well, she was fairly excited, and she said it's good news sort of thing. I really can't remember in detail.
That's okay. Did Heather say whether or not there was any particular reason given for the lunch?
There was no reason given for the lunch, and I remember talking to Heather, wondering why suddenly the invitation.
How did you feel about the invitation?
We were very happy to be invited, yes. It seemed like maybe our relationship with Erin was going to improve.
You were happy to be invited. I take it you were happy to accept the invitation. Were you aware if anyone else had been invited, firstly at the point where you became aware that you'd been invited?
At the point we were invited, we thought we were the only ones invited. I think Heather had some conversation with either Don or Gail, and we became aware that they had also been invited and that Simon too was invited.
Okay, Heather kept a diary, is that right?
Yes.
Of appointments or engagements?
Yes. She was very meticulous with keeping arrangements.
And is this something she would have noted down in her diary from your experience?
Yes, for sure.
I just want to ask you to have a look at this document. Firstly, these are photographs. Do you recognise that?
Yes.
What is that?
That is her diary.
From 2023, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and then if we go to the next photograph, please, do you see there that this is a photograph of entries in the week of July, commencing 24th of July, 2023?
Yes.
Okay, His Honour. I'll just interrupt you. Miss Warren, you're going to tender these photos? Miss Warren, I will, yes, Your Honour, yes. Hashtag Exhibit 5, photographs of Heather Wilkinson's diary. His Honour, can we get these uploaded? Miss Warren, yes. His Honour, have you got those, ladies and gentlemen? He's talking to the jury. Thank you. All right. Now I'm back to Miss Warren. I might ask my instructor just to zoom in on the weekend, the Saturday. Perfect. Okay. Mr. Wilkinson, if we look at Saturday, 29th of July, firstly, there's in red writing, Jeff 67. What was that in reference to?
That's in reference to our friend Jeff's 67th birthday.
And there is an arrow pointing up to the day before?
Yes.
That's the day you were going to get together to celebrate his birthday? And I'll ask you about that in a moment. If we look below, I beg your pardon, to the right of that, as we look at the screen, it says 3 p.m.
I think that's here, yes.
Angela and I might need your help with this. Okay. What's that in reference to?
That's in reference to a meeting, a preparation meeting for a meeting at church the following day. Jenny is the church secretary. Angela is the church treasurer, the head of the congregational meeting. We would typically get together to make sure reports and business and so on were all properly arranged.
Okay. So is it scheduled for 3 p.m. on that day, on that Saturday?
That meeting was scheduled for 3 p.m. on that day at our home.
And what does IW refer to?
I presume it refers to me.
And then below that, errands for lunch. Errands for lunch.
Yes.
And that's in reference to the lunch that was booked for 29 July. Is that right?
That is right.
In blue writing to the right of that, as we look to the screen, it says 12 o'clock.
Yes.
Do you know what that's in reference to?
That's in reference to Don and Gail coming to pick us up. We had to be ready by 12 o'clock.
Right. And then below that, fruit.
That would be referring to the fruit platter that we were going to be taking to lunch.
Thank you. Some of this and what I've just asked you about, but I want to ask you about your movements prior.
Yeah.
I thought, yeah.
And then turn now to the attendance at Erin's place for the lunch.
Okay. And you're all travelling to Erin's in Leongatha? So we've just skipped forward a little bit, and you all travelled to Erin's house in Leongatha, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you know what time approximately you arrived at Erin's house?
I would say approximately 12:30. I don't wear a watch, so I would say that's about the time.
Okay, the travel distance between Korumburra and Leongatha, what is that?
About 15 minutes.
So they were quite a bit late?
Yeah, they were a little bit late.
When you first arrived, did you or anyone else notice anything in particular?
When we pulled into Erin's house, Heather said, "Oh, Simon's car is not here."
And what, if anything, further was said about that?
Either Don or Gail, I can't remember which one, said Simon won't be coming to lunch.
Did you go into the house, or did you go to the house, up to the house?
Yes. We got out of the car, went over to the house. Erin met us and took us into the house.
Was anyone else present at the house when you got there?
No, it was just Erin and ourselves, yeah.
When you went to the house, where did you go?
We went into the kitchen dining lounge room. It's an open plan room, and we went into that room.
It was a relatively new build, is that right?
Yes, a new build.
Was there any conversation at that point in time?
There was general conversation, yes. There was how are yous and that sort of thing, and then we started conversing about the house.
Was there any exploration of the house?
No, we just stood in that area on the one spot talking about the house for quite a while. The conversation in my memory was largely driven by questions from Gail and Heather, and during the conversation, Erin mentioned that there was a pantry behind a wall in the kitchen area. Heather was very interested in pantries at that time because we just built one at home. Whenever we went to somebody's house where they said we have a pantry, she wanted to look at it because she wanted to get ideas for setting up a pantry. So on hearing about the pantry, she just immediately started walking towards it, calling out, "Can I have a look at your pantry?" And she assumed the answer would be yes. She got about halfway to the pantry and Gail decided she would go to the pantry. She started following and Heather was calling out to me, "Come and look at the pantry." I had noticed that Erin was very reluctant about the visit to the pantry and had not yet started following them, so I thought maybe the pantry is a mess and it's going to be an embarrassment, so I won't add to the embarrassment by joining the party.
Okay, all right. So Heather and Gail went to look in the pantry.
They went to look at the pantry and Erin followed them in, and they stood there for some time talking about the pantry. Heather called out to me, "Come on, come here and have a look." I just thought
You decided not to?
I'd be polite and just stayed where we were standing talking with Don.
Did you go anywhere else in the house or outside the house?
We reconvened and talked for a little while longer in the dining room, and then Heather or Gail, I can't remember which one it was, suggested we go out to look at the garden, and there was an agreement about doing that. So we moved out of the house onto the veranda that opened off the dining room, and we started talking about the garden. There'd been some work done in the garden recently, mulch laid, things like that. So we were discussing those sorts of things, the various plants and so on.
And where was Erin when this was taking place?
She was with us. We were just walking as a group up to the end of the veranda, looking out into the garden. It was a bit wet underfoot, I think. We looked at the particular bush at the end of the veranda. It wasn't doing so well. Heather and Gail are both keen gardeners. There was discussion about why this plant wasn't doing so well and whether it might be better moved to another location.
Okay, all right. And then after that, did the party return inside?
Yes, after a bit of time out there talking about the garden, there was some wind damage to the trees down towards the back fence, things like that, things to notice in the garden. So a bit of conversation, and then we wandered back into the house.
Okay, all right. Once you were back inside the house, what happened next?
That was the time that we started moving towards lunch, as in preparations for the lunch being served were.
Okay, I want to then ask you about that. What preparations were there that you observed in relation to the lunch?
The only preparations I saw were potatoes being mashed.
Yes, by whom?
I saw food being plated up. That's all I saw.
Okay, I just want to go through that step by step with you. Firstly, you said you saw potatoes being mashed. By whom were they being mashed?
They were being mashed by Erin.
And then did you see any other preparation of the food? His Honour, you said you saw the food being plated up. Who did you see plating up the food?
Erin plated up the food.
Miss Warren, where was Erin when she was doing that, when she was plating up the food?
She was on the kitchen side of the kitchen bench and she was putting the food on the plates.
In terms of the kitchen bench, are you able to provide a description of the layout of the kitchen dining room area?
Yes, I am.
Could you do that, please?
There was the kitchen.
Start with the kitchen, yes.
If we start with the kitchen.
Okay.
If we start with the kitchen, there was a bench that ran out dividing the kitchen area proper from the dining area. Erin was on the kitchen side of the bench. On the opposite side of the bench, Heather and Gail were standing. Then there was the kitchen table immediately behind them, and Don and I were on the other side of the kitchen table.
Okay, all right. We might bring up an image which I'll tender, Your Honour. And then Mr. Mandy, who is Erin's barrister, says no objection. Miss Warren, do you recognise this as the dining room and off to the left as you look at the picture, the kitchen of Erin's house?
Yes.
I tender, Your Honour. His Honour, yes. Exhibit 6, photo of Erin's dining kitchen area. This next bit, I actually listened to it while it happened. But basically what's going on is Ian's chair. You know, sometimes like you got an office chair and they just degas. That's what happened to Ian. So that's you, witness, where it says there.
Right. My chair has subsided suddenly. That's a bit better.
Miss Warren, that should be uploaded now, Your Honour. His Honour, yes. Miss Warren, have you got that there in front of you, Mr. Wilkinson?
Yes.
So you've described the kitchen and then the bench that divided the kitchen from the dining room. So we don't see that to the left of the photo.
Yes.
And in your evidence, you said that Erin was on the kitchen side of the bench. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You said that Gail and Heather were on the other side of the bench, the dining room side of the bench.
Yes.
Now, how close were they to the bench?
They were leaning against the side of the bench.
And then you said that you and Don were on the other side of the table. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So as we look at that photograph, you're aware to the far right of the photograph. Is that right?
Yes.
I should repeat that. You were to the far right of that photograph. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this is at the point in time when the meal was being served. Is that right?
That is correct.
His Honour, being plated?
Being plated, yes.
Miss Warren, yes, thank you. I just want to go back a step. You said that you saw potatoes being mashed. I just want to be clear. Did you see any other food being prepared other than the potatoes?
No.
From where you were standing, could you see Erin plating up the food?
Yes.
Was there any discussion between anyone about plating up the food?
Yes, there was.
What was that?
Both Heather and Gail were offering to help plate up the food.
And was that offer accepted or not?
No, the offer was rejected and Erin plated.
And did Erin plate all the food that went onto the plates?
All the food.
Oh, what was on the plates, please?
There was mashed potatoes, green beans and a beef Wellington.
The beef Wellington, did you see where that came from before it was plated?
No, I didn't.
Can you describe what the individual beef Wellington looked like?
Each person had an individual serve. It was very much like a pasty, if you imagine a pasty being put on a plate. It was a pastry case, and when we cut into it, there was steak and mushrooms.
Okay, so each person had one?
Each person had an individual serve.
And you described it very much like a pasty?
Very much like a pasty.
Was it enclosed or open?
completely pastry encased.
Okay, so Louise and I, we were just on a mission, which we sabotaged terribly. There was this duck out the front of where Louise's business here, right? And we thought it was injured, honest to God, because it had been hanging around for hours. And when we went out there, it was kind of like in the duck version of, what would you say, like in the fetal position?
Yeah, didn't look happy.
It was letting us get way too close to it. So we rang up Wires and we said we'd like to report an injured duck. So they said we had to get a washing basket and luckily, because Louise runs a dance studio, the Tribe Collective, you had a washing basket.
Yes.
So then I rang my poor husband because he gets all these jobs. We said, you've got to come, because that's what the Wires people told us. We had to put a washing basket over the duck so he didn't get pecked from above or something.
Yeah, because he was vulnerable to prey, they said.
Vulnerable to prey. So my husband turns up. He did, for maybe 2 milliseconds, he did get the bird. The bird flew off because I had this theory it couldn't fly. And I was saying to Louise, oh, no, don't you think if I got that close it would fly off? So anyway, that's what happened while we were doing our mid-podcast break.
Yeah, it turns out nothing wrong with the duck.
Anyway, but thank you to the people at Wires. They've got a good service, don't they?
Well, they do, and they're very caring and compassionate about animals, and that's lovely.
It is lovely. So there goes the duck. So shall we start again with this?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And you said that inside there was, I beg your pardon, His Honour, steak and mushrooms. Miss Warren, steak and mushrooms, thank you. Steak and mushrooms inside it.
Yes, that's correct.
Is that something you were aware of before you cut into it or after you cut into it?
It was after I cut into it.
Okay, all right. Was anything else added to the plate? Any condiments, anything of that nature?
I didn't add anything to mine. There may have been gravy available on the table.
Now, at the time that Erin was plating the food, so we're still at the kitchen bench, I've asked you whether or not you had a view of whether you could see. Specifically, could you see the plates that she was using?
Yes, I could see the plates.
And where, firstly, were the plates as the food was being plated?
There were 5 plates, of course.
Perhaps I'll be clear about my question. We've had the bench described that was divided between the kitchen and the dining room.
Yes.
And there were other areas of the kitchen, presumably. Where in the kitchen were the plates where the food was plated on?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I lost that last bit.
Where in the kitchen were the plates when the food was being put onto them?
They were on the kitchen bench.
Okay. On that bench that divides the kitchen and the dining room?
Yes, and I could see them between Heather and Gail.
Okay. You said that there were 5 plates?
Yes.
Can you describe the plates, please?
Yes, there were 4 large grey dinner plates and 1 smaller plate, a different colour. I think it was an orangey tan sort of colour.
What colour were the 4 large dining plates?
They were a grey colour.
Different shades of grey. Light grey, dark grey, somewhere in between?
Sort of a middle grey, we'll say.
And you described the smaller plate. You said an orangey tan colour.
Yep.
Once the food was plated, how were those plates distributed? Who distributed those plates?
Well, the plates were distributed by 3 different people. Gail picked up the 2 grey plates and put them on the table. Heather picked up the 2 grey plates and put them on the table. And Erin picked up the odd plate and carried it to the table.
And where to the table did Erin take that plate?
She took it to her place at the table.
Now, turning to the table, were there any formal seating arrangements or was it a casual arrangement?
It was a casual arrangement. We just seemed to naturally sit down in place.
All right. Do you, as you sit here today, recall who sat where?
Yes, I do. Don sat furthest away from me on the right hand, on my right-hand side. He was sitting with his back to the kitchen bench.
His Honour, could you use the photograph that you were shown before?
Yes.
That's Exhibit 6. Miss Warren, Exhibit 6, we'll bring that up. His Honour, Have you got that up on your screen there?
I do, yes.
Good. All right. Miss Warren, what we might do, Mr. Wilkinson, is can you mark that on the screen? It's a touch screen, so you don't have to do anything except mark where I asked you to. Now, looking at that photograph, we were just talking about where Don was sitting firstly. Could you mark that, please, where Don was perhaps using a D? You've gone with an X. Are you able to put a D?
D.
There is an XD. His Honour, are we able to put it up on the screen there so that I can see it? Excuse me a moment. All right, it's working. I suppose to be up on that screen, but it's not working at the moment. There it is. Miss Warren, if there's no objection, I might start again. His Honour, you've put a yellow mark there. It looks to me like a D. Miss Warren said, OK, we'll call it a D.
A pretty funny D.
Miss Warren, can we please mark where Gail was sitting with a G?
With a G?
That kind of looks like a C.
Yeah, that's the one.
And then please, if you could mark where Heather was sitting and then yourself with an I, and then Erin, please, with an E. I'll tender that as marked, Your Honour. His Honour, yes. Exhibit 7, photo of dining table seats marked by Ian Wilkinson. Miss Warren, that's just being uploaded, Your Honour. We'll perhaps just wait for that to happen. His Honour, have you got all that, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you. Miss Warren, Mr. Wilkinson, I've asked you about how the plates were distributed, and you've given evidence that Erin carried the smaller orangey tan-coloured plate to where she was sitting at the table. I just want to ask you to be very specific about this. What type of plate from the descriptions that you have given did you eat from?
I ate from a grey plate.
Heather?
A grey plate.
Gail?
A grey plate.
Don?
A grey plate.
And Erin?
A rusty-coloured plate, orangey tan plate, whatever it was.
Prior to eating the meal, was anything done or said?
We said grace.
And then did you eat the meal?
Yes, we began eating.
Was there conversation during the meal?
Yes, just a little conversation, comments about the meal.
In terms of portions of the meal eaten, did you all or none of you eat your meal?
I ate the entire meal.
What about Heather?
She ate the entire meal.
And Gail?
She ate her vegetables and half of the beef Wellington.
And then what about Don?
Don ate his entire meal and he ate the half of the beef Wellington that Gail didn't eat.
And there was some banter or teasing about that, is that right?
Yes, that's what I remember. There was talk about husbands helping their wives out by eating extra food. Heather mentioned we should have shared a beef Wellington because she thought the meal was a bit on the larger side for her. So that's the reason I remember who ate it, because of that little exchange.
What about Erin? Did you notice or see how much she ate?
I can't say with certainty how much she ate. She was definitely eating. I don't remember any comments like you didn't eat much or anything like that.
All right. I'm not sure if I asked you this before, so I'll apologise if I'm repeating this. Did every plate have the same food items on it?
Yes.
And that includes Erin's plate?
Yes.
Once that part of the lunch was eaten, was there anything else served?
Gail had taken a cake and there was the fruit platter that Heather had arranged.
Was the cake consumed?
Not much cake was consumed, not much fruit was consumed. We were all fairly full from the main course.
Of the cake and fruit that was consumed, how was that served?
It was a help yourself off plates on the table.
His Honour, Miss Warren, I want to give the jury a break at a convenient time. Miss Warren, yes. Can I ask just a couple more questions and then I'll to the witness? You said that it was a help yourself in terms of any plates that were used by any individuals. Were the same plates used or were the different plates used?
I can't recall.
Just finally, before we take a break, were any drinks consumed throughout the lunch or after the lunch?
I remember a glass of water at the lunch, yep.
That is a convenient time. His Honour, all right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a 15-minute break. Mr. Wilkinson,
Thank you.
At 11:56 a.m, the jury left the court. And Louise and I might leave the podcast. And we can get back to later, do a few more of these. But thank you, Louise. That was absolutely awesome, you helping me out. And our attempted animal saviour.
Yeah, listen, what an afternoon.
Oh, gosh. I think we just injected chaos into that, didn't we?
I think we did.
Bouncing off each other. I think it's not well. It's not well. I can see the green bit. Remember you saw the green feather? And I was like, yeah, that can't be good.
No.
That's why I'm a podcaster, and that's why you are an entrepreneur.
Yep.
We're not vets.
No, definitely not.
But thank you, everyone, for listening. Okay, this week, the jury's going out today, Monday. We shall see what happens. The judge is going to have a quick chat to them and just clarify a few areas of law, and then they go, and they're going to be, for the week, depends how long it takes, though. It's hard to tell how long juries will take. So I can't say, but they're going to be sequestered in a hotel room, which basically means the only chatting about the case that they'll do is in the jury room, and then they'll be sent to a hotel just to keep them away from media. People like myself, Louise.
You big, scary person, you.
No, I'm a lover of animals.
Yeah, clearly.
We're rescuers now.
We're rescuers.
Okay, this is probably a bit too frenzied for this time of the day, but, it's not often this happens, is it, Louise?
Well, it's not. I mean, I didn't expect to, turn up, do this podcast, have to rescue an animal.
Because we're in the Newcastle area, and you don't expect to see ducks every day except at the park.
Well, yeah, and we're in the CBD.
Exactly. We're across from Woolworths.
Yes.
So anyway, I will chat to you all very, very soon, but I will come back with more of these this week, depending on how long it takes with the jury. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And make sure you go to my website, mushroommurdertrial.com, and sign up for that newsletter. It is the #1 newsletter in Newcastle. You need to be there, but have a great week. Look after yourself. We've apparently got some terrible weather coming.
We do.
So lucky we did rescue that duck then.
Yes,
Not
definitely.
that we did, but anyway. All right, have a good one. Thank you. Thank you to Louise. Bye.
This episode is dedicated to Ducky.
Ducky. We didn't know you very long, but you made an impact.
Yes.
Ducky.
And then the off.